Hey everyone, David here, and I've got some exciting news to share. I've decided to write a book, and I've entitled it Psychosocial Hazards Are Real. The book is intended to help clarify the fact that psychological safety cannot be achieved without paying attention to the psychosocial hazards people are being exposed to. Despite how much individuals might be interested in treating others with kindness, dignity, and respect, many cultures are so full of psychosocial traps that no psychological health and safety effort can ultimately succeed. But to address psychosocial hazards, you first have to know what they are, and you have to have some idea what to do to address them. Though the book won't be 100% complete until the spring of 2025, I'd like to share a unique opportunity to reserve a copy during the book presale campaign. The campaign will run from September 16th to October 18th, 2024. This will be an opportunity to get one of the first copies of the book, tickets to the book launch event, and other opportunities to learn more about psychosocial hazards. For more information, you can go to my personal LinkedIn or Facebook page, or the LinkedIn, Facebook, or webpage for ID2 Solutions. Don't miss out on this unique opportunity. Now, back to this episode of the podcast. Sometimes what might be described as a dream job doesn't have everything we want and may not feel psychologically healthy or safe. While some might say stay and endure, others keep seeking and some find an even greater calling. We'll talk with someone who found that higher calling in the field of medicine. Up next on this episode of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. From Flourish DX, this is the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. As workplace mental health has become a global priority, there's a greater focus on addressing psychosocial hazards. Each week, we look at psychological safety from an occupational health and safety perspective. Let's talk psychological health and safety. Welcome to this week's Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. I'm your host, Dr. I. David Daniels, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Each week, we seek to increase awareness of the importance of psychological health and safety by learning from the lived experiences, research, and expertise of our guests, as well as advocating strategies to reduce harm and minimize vulnerability to psychosocial hazards in the American workplace. So many occupations are widely believed to be a dream job. These dream jobs often inspire young people to seek to design their lives around that opportunity. Some occupations are so appealing that young people start doing the things necessary to get into that career early and often. Sometimes these early efforts pay off, and highly motivated young people end up in those dream jobs. However, not everything that glitters is gold. For any number of reasons, there may be reasons that the dream changes. So how do people respond when the dream turns out to be not as satisfying as expected? One option is to give up and to descend into depression as a result of the dreams being dashed. Another option is to seek out an even greater challenge. So in this episode, I have the pleasure of speaking to someone who's done the latter. After spending years preparing for one career, entering extremely young, he discovered that there was something in that first career that didn't necessarily satisfy, and he set off to do something that some may have believed was impossible. So I want to get right into the story, and I get into that story with an introduction of my guest, by my guest, in this case with this question. Who is Dr. Andre Schaffer?
Hey guys, so I'm Dr. Andre Schaffer. I'm a board certified orthopedic surgeon. I have specialties in trauma, spine, and hip preservation. And that's my professional sort of byline. But who is Andre Schaffer? Who is the person? I'm somebody who's always had a lot of interests, who's always tried to spin a lot of plates and keep a ton of irons in the fire. And those were some of the things that actually I think made my first career very appealing. in large part just due to kind of my early educational experiences, good and bad. And then as I kind of grew and matured, I was able to kind of keep a bunch more of those irons in the fire and learn, well, maybe there's more for me. So I'm somebody who, is always going to keep striving to do better, striving to learn new things, striving to do new stuff, because that's just who I am. That's my nature. Um, I used to think that I used to think that I was kind of not that I was atypical, if that makes sense. But more and more as I think as as we're sort of learning how many people have some of these psychological struggles of being bored in their jobs or being unfulfilled with what they do, with not feeling like they have a runway, right, or like a cushion for them to kind of explore new things. I think we're starting to learn that a lot of people want to do a lot of different things, and that there's a lot of um, unrealized. Oops, sorry, the camera's moving around. A lot of unrealized potential in the world, right? Um, so yeah, that's me, right? As someone who's going to try and get every little bit of potential I have out of myself.
So, another somewhat standard question I ask folks when they come on. So, what does psychological health and safety mean to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, it means the ability to do, specifically within the workplace. It means the ability to do your job without your job taking you under, right? Um, so many of us, right? We do work for 6, 8, 10, 24 hours a day. Sometimes 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, sometimes in a row. And when you do something, when you're at a place that long, that ends up being a surrogate family, and you have surrogate family dynamics. And to me, being able to have a functional family as opposed to a dysfunctional family at work, um, that's what psychological safety means, right? Is you need these people to not drag you under. You need these people to not hurt you, and hurt how you feel about yourself, and hurt how you see yourself, not hurt your self concept. We need that at home too, right? The things balance each other, and some people, they. I had a mentor who said you could tell people who don't like going home because they always stay at work, and vice versa, right? There's a lot of reason people don't like their jobs necessarily, and that's because they don't necessarily feel safe or healthy in their jobs. So I think it just means that I think psychological health and safety means that you aren't going to end up worse for the wear based on sort of the exposure, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very apt description. Very apt description. So let's take a trip into the Wayback Machine. Um, so talk a little bit about your early interest and experience in the fire rescue service.
Yeah. So I'll start way back. I was a sophomore in high school, and I was not a good student at the time. I was smart, but I was running into an educational system that wasn't able to see me for who I was because it just didn't have the resources and the time, and there are people who didn't, you know, understand, ADHD basically. And I didn't understand it either. I wasn't diagnosed. I didn't know I had it. Um, and so, right, there's this kid who's kind of bouncing all over the place, interested in a little bit of everything, smart, able to do a lot of stuff, but not able to really get any one person to kind of see, hey, this is who I am, and this is what I got. I've got these tools, but I also have these differences or these challenges that make me not quite as easy as people think I should be. And so I'm on my way to Starbucks. So they had just opened a Starbucks in the Central District. I went to Garfield High School, and I was walking down 24th Avenue, and there's a fire in a house. There's a bunch of firefighters standing around. And I was a newly minted lifeguard from the summer before. And I saw these firefighters. I saw this house that's on fire, and I went up to this gentleman by the name of Thaddeus Zeus Mercer, who, for those who don't know, is huge, man. Just this kind of colossus kind of guy. He's like 6 foot tall, 330, just huge. And I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, I know first aid if anybody's hurt," just because I'm trying to be helpful. Um, I'm trying to be helpful. And he's like, "No, no, no, we got this under control, son." And I'm like, "Oh." And he's like, "It's a training fire." And I was like, "Oh." And it just immediately captivated my interest. Just immediately, it looked so amazing. It was so cool. It was like, all these people and these teams, and you could tell they were working together, and there was a bunch of, like, a real sense of teamwork, and it was serious. And one of the things for people who have ADHD is that, forced pressure gets them to really clicks them in, and it's almost this calming effect. If you have to do something because it's serious, it's dangerous, it's hard, right? That's when people with ADHD kind of shine, right? And I could see it. I could just, and I didn't know, oh, I have ADHD. This is why I'm attracted to it. But I could see, I was like, oh, this is for me. This is for me. And I knew immediately. Um, and so I started asking him a bunch of questions, and he's like, "You're asking a lot of questions. I want you to consider being a fire cadet." And so he gave me a number for Lieutenant Keith Wyatt, who's another, father figure to me now at this point. And so I said, "Hey, let's go." And so I called him up, and miracle of miracles, he answered the phone first ring, which is almost like never happens. And it was kind of meant to be. And so he said, "Hey, I want you to show up to Fire Station 14 at 7:30 in the morning this Saturday, and we'll get you in. You luckily are uh, on time for, like, the next meeting is our new member meeting." And I was like, "Oh yeah, let's go." So I showed up because I was just interested. It was really cool. It seemed like a good thing. And then the more and more I learned about it, it seemed like, hey, this is the path. This is the way to go. And again, I was not a great student, and it paid great. The work hours were amazing. The work itself seemed, and was fulfilling. It was good stuff. And I was like, yeah, I could do this. I think I could do this. And so, the next 2 years, right, my junior and my senior year of high school, became me doing everything I could to become a firefighter, right? It was ride-alongs. It was figuring out, how the city was laid out, where fire stations were, everything I could do just to, get myself a little bit closer. That was what I did. It was one of my first passions that felt realistic, right? That felt practical. Um, and it was great. And so, yeah, I applied my senior year of high school, and I think I took the test while I was still in school. I hadn't even graduated when I took the written test, and uh, you know, did the physical and the captain's board interview, and yeah, just all these steps, and then I got hired with recruit class 82, January 8th, 2000, and that was it. The rest was history.
Right, right, right. Well, let me let me add for the audience. When you showed up on January 8th of 2000, there was a newly, well, not a newly minted, but there was a guy sitting down there as a chief of training, which looks a lot like me. Actually, it was me, and I had heard this story as well, and the story was very interesting to me because, yeah, I've had a few more birthdays. Again, for some who may not know, your mom and I went to high school together. As a matter of fact, your mom and I went to high school together, and she was the trainer for the wrestling team, and I was a wrestler, so I knew her quite well, at least in high school, and we kind of gone our separate ways. And I didn't know that she had a son, and lo and behold, here he shows up as a recruit in this training program, and a little bit of, I'm not sure how much of this that you'd ever known, but When I was assigned to become the chief of training for the Seattle Fire Department, I was told that our recruit training program had a 40% washout rate, and it was 70% for women and people of color. And part of my goal, some of it was assigned to me, the other was just something I thought was important, was we trying to find a way to make sure that people who wanted to be successful could be. And a lot of that, this is when I really kind of realized that systems, every system is perfectly designed to produce whatever it's currently producing. And the people who didn't make it through the class, it wasn't because they were bad candidates. It was because the system was set up to fail them. It really was. It wasn't set up for them to be successful. It was still set up under the old kind of, militaristic, scream and yell at people type, process. And frankly, I just didn't believe it. I didn't think that that was the way to do it. And if I'm not mistaken, I think everyone in your class completed it, or 95% of them completed the class, if I'm not mistaken.
We had one drop in the first. I think she dropped in the first 3 days. It was before we had gotten into anything meaningful, and she was replaced like 3 days later by somebody who's still a firefighter.
I don't know that I was with Seattle for 20 years, and I don't think there was another recruit class that can say that everybody got through. I don't. I literally. And it wasn't because there were bad people in the classes. That was the point. It actually cost a lot of money and cost, when I started, I quit 2 jobs. They called me on the day before my 21st birthday. I quit 2 jobs on a Friday or over the weekend and started the following Wednesday. And I had no idea that a lot of people didn't make it through. I just jumped into it. And, but again, I mean, something that you shared in this conversation that I had no idea that you had ADHD, not a clue. I knew, now the one thing again that I will share, and you may have heard this before as well, that toward the end of the class, I had some folks come in, as a chief, they come in and they tell you who they think should make it and who doesn't. And they said, well, we're not sure about this one kid. Well, what do you mean? He's too young. I go like, huh? What do you mean? Did he pass everything? Well, yeah. Can he do everything? Well, yeah. But he's too young. I go like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So yeah, that's not a good reason. So that just didn't make a lot of sense. And I find that happens in a lot of occupations where people make these decisions not based on what people are capable of, but because of how old they are. And often it's the kind of reverse age discrimination. Well, they're too young to do this. And I just don't necessarily buy that. Either you can do it or you can't. It really doesn't matter how old you are. It really doesn't. I think a lot of these minimum age things are kind of ridiculous. But anyway, again, a little bit of disclosure on that. So you, like the other folks in that class, got out and did your thing and rode on fire trucks and all that type of thing. So when did you decide you wanted to do something different?
Yeah. So I was at Fire Station 30, and things started to, it's, the game kind of slows down, right? And you just kind of know what you're doing, or you feel like you know what you're doing, and you're like, okay, well, I need to do something different because this isn't. I've got ADHD, right? I have to do. I seek novelty, right? So now I'm thinking, well, maybe I want to be a medic, or maybe I want to go to, the heavy rescue team, or maybe I want to go to twos, or maybe I want to do something different within the fire service. And this is about the same time as, this is years later, actually, after Kevin Locke. I don't know if you remember Kevin Locke. He was a firefighter or a recruit who went through EMT school with me. And while he was in recruit school, fell about 50 feet off of a ladder and broke everything, basically. And the city tried to, this was after your time as a recruiter, as the chief of training, but the city basically tried to fire him, and just kind of left him on the side of the road. And I looked at myself and said, hey, I have a high school diploma. and I'm doing something that's dangerous. I need to go to college. I just need to go to school so I have a backup plan kind of thing. And you talk about uh, systems being designed for the outcomes that they get, whether you think you're designing for those outcomes or not. And I had a terrible experience in high school and middle school. It was just not a good experience educationally. But I was like, all right, I got to drag myself to college. I got to go to college. And so by this point, I'm in college now and I'm having a great experience. And I'm like, wait, hold on. I there's some stuff I'm capable of. Maybe I should see, right? Um, and so I'm basically finishing up college now at this point, and I'm thinking I might be able to apply to like grad school, like medical school or something. And this is literally feels like a pipe dream. I've taken the prereqs, I've done well, but it didn't seem, because I didn't know any doctors, I didn't know anybody who'd gone through medical school, and here I was I'm a fireman. That's what I do. Um, and so I applied to at the same time. Well, I applied to go to transfer to engine two, and I ended up getting it on seniority. And there was there was a little bit of consternation about that because I wasn't one of their chosen guys. Um, and at the same time, I said, "Hey, let me look into this whole medical school application thing." And the reason I went to two is because I was thinking, well, maybe I want to be a paramedic. Maybe that's what I want to do. I had a penchant for the medicine side of the job, and it made sense to me. And long story short, I ended up obviously applying to medical school. But I applied to medical school the way that a lot of people apply to the fire service, right? You just apply, and you think, oh well, I'm not. If maybe I won't get in, but I'll learn something about it, and I'll apply a second time. And so that's what I did. Is I applied, and I was like the dog that caught the car. I got in the first time, and I was just like, oh, I have to go. I can't. I, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I have to try it. And so yeah, I ended up going to Cornell Medical School. That was where I got in. And I was in New York City, and that changed my life in a lot of ways. But the genesis of applying was both me seeing a new side of myself, uh, seeing some capability that I didn't think I had, and then the other part of it was just boredom, right? Boredom can ruin you, or it can be a massive force for good. And in my case, it was the latter, and I was really, really fortunate. And the fire service, I have a complex relationship with sort of my time there. I still miss it. I think in a lot of ways it was some of the best times of my life, and not just because of my age and youth. It was more. It was just. It was a. There was a lot of camaraderie. Once you got yourself into the right crew, once you got yourself where you belonged, and once you kind of proven yourself, you know what I mean? And everybody knew you, and you knew everybody. There was a lot. There was room for a lot of psychological safety, but the process of getting to that point was not always kind or gentle or safe, frankly.
Yes, yeah, yeah. No, I so relate to that to that feeling, because and what I find is, and again, this is not unique. I think we're having a conversation about the fire rescue service that is not unique to the fire rescue service. Again, most systems are what they were designed to be. And if they were designed to be slow and plodding and mechanical and linear sequential, they don't do well with creative thinkers. They don't do well with people who think outside the box. They just don't. And again, there's a part of me that even understands some of that because, as you know, being in an emergency situation is somewhat chaotic, and there is some need for structure, but I think it becomes almost too structured sometimes, and it limits the contributions of people who just see it differently. And I tell this story a lot. Again, you may or may not have heard it as well, but there was a situation that actually occurred in Seattle at the Pang warehouse fire. You remember in January of 1995. You weren't around then in the department, but I'm sure certain you heard about it, where one group of it was Engine 13 actually. They were getting ready to go in, and the lieutenant and a firefighter, and then two firefighters in front. The first two firefighters saw something, but they never said anything because they knew the lieutenant wouldn't listen. Because that was a system. You didn't speak up. You didn't forcefully push back when you disagreed because you had to kind of follow the rules. But that very decision may have contributed to some of the people who died because it wasn't psychologically safe enough to just say, hey, I see this. And again, if you think about it, and I don't know what it's like to be in an operating room, but I rather suspect that there's more than one set of eyes there. And sometimes one person may see something that the other one doesn't. The question is, do they feel okay? Just hey, doc, did you see this? Or, their blood pressure's doing that. Or this isn't what we expected. And if people can't bring those things up, everybody loses out, I believe. Everybody.
So I take a lot of, I remember one of the things we had in the fire department was this, while you were doing high angle rescue or low angle rescue, rope rescue, stop. Why stop? And there was the idea that anyone on the fire ground, anyone on the scene could say something. And that was something that had to be sort of introduced. And I remember when this was being talked about and being like, oh, okay, we can all say something if we see something crazy. That's not necessarily the case in every operating room. And my operating room is absolutely the case. I want you to say, if you see something, I want you to say something. I want people to speak up. Right. And, maybe sometimes it feels like a nuisance, but you know what? I'd rather we were safe, and I'd rather we were certain that everybody felt good about going forward with something. Now, if there's a time where, things are going not as well as we want them, yeah, absolutely, I'm going to take charge, and it's my room, and I'm responsible ultimately. So hey, this is what we're going to do. But in the meantime, I want people to be able to say stuff. I want people to be able to kind of like brief and debrief, and I want people to be able to to have their say, because yeah, everyone has their unique perspective, and people have seen things I haven't seen. I've seen things people haven't seen. Right? We all bring different we all bring different sort of attitudes and skills and attributes and talents to the room. And at the end of the day, it's about the person who's on the table and getting them in, under, through, closed, and out safely, right? And having everything accomplished. And in a lot of ways, it's just like going on a run, right? You have four people who may or may not have worked together, right? And everyone's just trying to do the best that they can. And at the end of the day, the objective is what has to get the objective has to get achieved. But if you don't, if two of the four don't feel like they can say anything, well, you don't actually have four people, right? You have four bodies, you have four sets of hands, but you don't have four people. Our minds are our most powerful assets, right? What we know, what we think, those are our more powerful assets, not how strong we are, not how much we could lift or carry. That part's nice, right? What you can do physically is nice, but it doesn't, half the battle is prevention. So,
do you need more psych health and safety in your life? Then head over to the Flourish DX Academy for several free on-demand e-learning courses. If you're an internal professional, follow Flourish DX on Eventbrite to register for any of our free fortnightly interactive webinars. Our flagship professional practice program is also exclusively available for internal professionals. The 12-week course blends theory, applied practice, and interaction with other professionals through live lectures and a monthly community of practice session. Find out more about all these learning opportunities or inquire about a bespoke in-house training at the Flourish DX Academy. www.45003.org. Now back to this episode.
So you go to, and again, this is outside looking in, a prestigious, not just, Joe's medical school. You go to Cornell. And so what leads you to become a surgeon as opposed to, a pediatrician or a foot doctor or what have you. What is what draws you into surgery?
Getting to do stuff. I think one of the things about me is I'm a kinesthetic learner, right? So you talk about like figuring out learning styles, right? That was, the fire department helped me figure some of that out, but then the medical school helped me figure kind of the rest of it out. Medical school is where I figured out, oh, hey, I have ADHD. Medical school is where I started getting inklings of it. Medical school is where I realized like I'm a kinesthetic learner. Like I need to do something with my hands. That's how I stay engaged, right? Um, I love talking to people in clinic, but that talking to people in clinic is great. I love the process of ushering people through this. I like the privilege of ushering people through this kind of like process that can be nerve wracking. Um, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't actually like doing things, right? Like my favorite part of the fire service was going to fires, right? Was the emergencies. It was the runs, right? It wasn't, sitting in the station and mopping, happy to do that. That was fine, but hey, when the tones went, that was when it got good, and so I'm one of those people who wants to turn a wrench, who wants to have a screwdriver in my hand, wants to be doing something physically. And that was just, one of the things I realized about a lot of medicine is it's a lot of thought work, which I think is beneficial and is important. And that's where the majority of my value comes in. But I also needed to have projects. I also needed to do stuff that I'm doing, physically. And that was nice. And then, why orthopedics? Orthopedic surgery is just a really if you think about what kind of defines us as humans, or really even just animals, not just humans, animals, is the ability to move. And when you take away someone's ability to move, you change their life, um, like in a massive way, in a huge way. People who can't move go through a massive psychological gauntlet, frankly, right? People break bones, and I tell people routinely, hey, you need to get yourself into counseling because you just had your sense of who you are as an animal, not a person, an animal taken away from you, right? You broke your femur, you broke your leg, and you can't walk for 3 months. The fears that come out of people are primal. And so that was something that kind of appealed to me, right? Because it's like not only do I get to kind of caretake still, which is my personality, but I get to do something physical and I get to kind of mesh the two together. Um, there's I remember who it was, but there was an anthropologist who was asked sort of what the earliest signs of uh, civilization were, and they said evidence of a person who survived a broken femur, because you can't live through a broken femur without care, without someone else caring for you, which indicates that you had food and you had adequate food, you had adequate water, you had adequate supplies that this person who was integral to right a small group could lay up for 6 months, 9 months, however long it took for that femur to heal, and then they could go back out and kind of be who they could be, right? And so, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that some people within medicine don't see as smart or as important, right? It's medicine is in a lot of ways like the fire service with its silly little rivalries and uh, you know engine versus truck, medicine versus ortho, that kind of thing. But um, orthopedics is wildly important stuff. Again, getting people to be able to move, getting people to be able to, uh, you know, lessen their pain and things like that. Their bodily pain is huge.
I again, I can't say I had ever thought about the implications of a person with a broken femur without folks around them. I mean, it just does hadn't really occurred, but that's a big deal. That's a big deal, and how much that shows even about the society or the group that the people were in. That says a lot. I also wanted to inquire. So I, as an occupational health and safety professional, think a lot about this connection between how people feel prior to something negative happening, occurring, some type of incident, an injury, an exposure, or what have you, and then that whole recovery process after. And there's this mind body connection that somehow we've tried to, exacerbate over the course of time. That and again, it's my belief that if you don't feel safe, you aren't going to be safe. If you don't feel healthy, you are not healthy. And it doesn't matter what's really going on. It matters how you feel about it. And sometimes, again, organizations, I would say, who don't put in enough time and attention to preventing people's injuries, their physical injuries. They don't put in the time necessary. Then after the person gets hurt, they go too far the other way that, oh, because the person's hurt, they can't do this, they can't do that, their life's over, they can't work anymore, blah, blah, blah. When you kind of set that up by not paying attention to the prevention side. So talk a little bit about that kind of mind. You mentioned it a little bit, that when people can't be mobile, that has this kind of psychological effect on them. So talk a little bit more about that piece, because I think that's really important.
So there's this concept known as fear catastrophizing. I can never say the word right, but basically the fear that you're going to hurt yourself worse, right? That you hurt yourself once, you're going to hurt yourself worse again. That there's this vulnerability and this fear of the sort of the process of healing, right? Because the early part of it is painful and it's difficult and there's a lot of uncertainty. You break your hip, you break your arm, your wrist, your elbow, your shoulder. You have no idea what it means for your future. You have no idea. You have no idea. Is this going to hurt like this forever? Is this what am I going to be able to do? What am I not going to be able to do? And so people come to me, on the trauma side of things, and sometimes on the spine and hip side of things, people come to me with these problems and they're looking for a solution. And, there's a physical aspect, there's a structural aspect. Okay, bone is broken. Okay, hip is arthritic. Disc is herniated and ruptured and it's pushing on the nerve, right? There's this part of things. Then there's this sort of layer, this pain and psychological layer with the patient, right? Where they're experiencing this pain, they're experiencing this immobility, and they're experiencing concern about how long is this going to take? I'm stuck in this body. I can't get out of this. How am I going to get to my new normal? And is my new normal going to be as good as my old normal was? And intrinsically, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know, right? And so I have to figure out how to help people navigate that uncertainty. And I think that's actually the hardest part, is the uncertainty. And then we do a surgery, we fix bones, we do what we have to do. And, there's pain post-operatively, there's there's stiffness post-operatively, there's, difficult rehabilitation or potentially difficult rehabilitation, depending on what our strategy is surgically. And those things can take time. Right? Those things can take time. And I routinely will tell patients, especially at my 6-week visit. So I usually see people at 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 months. That's kind of the general cadence of follow-ups. And I'll tell people at my 2-week visit, hey, at 6 weeks, you're not going to be happy. Okay? You're not going to be happy. I don't expect you to be satisfied with where you're at yet. I call my 6-week visit my 6-week pep talk. This is where I'm going to be like buffing you up and like getting you excited. I'm going to be your cheerleader at 6 weeks. What am I doing? I'm checking to make sure nothing has turned sour or nothing's gone wrong. And then the second thing I'm doing is I'm like pumping you up. Hey, you can do it. It's okay that you're feeling these symptoms. You're early. Come on, keep going. And that's really, that's really important. And then, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, if I see people in between there, oftentimes at 12 weeks, I'll tell people flat out, half of your recovery is not going to be physical. It's going to be mental. Half of your recovery is mental. You have to go from being, if you think about where you were when you were hurt, you were a wounded bird, right? You were holding your wing, you were hurt. That was your state in your mind. You have to go from hurt to not hurt in your mind in order for you to not be hurt. And that's, but I think, a lot of patients come come across that kind of those concepts on their own. They don't have someone telling them explicitly, like, "Hey, you have to change your mindset from being hurt to being not hurt." And that's difficult. And like that's hard. Changing your mind about what your body is after something so impactful, so sudden, so unexpected. That's difficult. Even if it's taken years, right? You think about someone who has a bad hip, right? It takes them years to get to the point where they need surgery or they'll seek surgery. But by that point, they've made all these little changes to their life. Oh well, I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna park, in the middle of the park. I got to park up close. Oh hey, I can't go to this big box store. I gotta order online. I don't think I can go to that concert. I don't think I can go to dinner. I don't think I can do this. I just don't have it in me. I just don't. But your identity changes with all these things that you do. And so, yeah, maybe you're not hurt in the same way as like, oh, I fell off of a roof or I fell off of a fence and broke something really quick. But slowly but surely, your idea about who you are gets chipped away by this pain that you're experiencing. And either way it goes, whether it happens fast or whether it happens slow, my job is to help people see that, hey, you were hurt. You are not hurt now, right? Or you were hurt. You have to fight to not be hurt now. That's your job.
You make me think this description that you're providing about the importance of seeing yourself as not hurt. I believe, and again, I am not a psychologist. I don't even play one on TV, but I believe that happens psychologically as well. Because, and this is something I talk about in this book that I've written, the connection between pain and hurt and ultimately trauma long term. That those that feel pain and somehow convince himself it's okay for that to feel the pain. And, we've even told people no pain, no gain. Some of that is nonsense. Not all of it, but some is just nonsense because people endure things that they really shouldn't be enduring because it doesn't have to be like that. And then some will get to the point to where they either physically or emotionally hurt, and it becomes difficult to not be hurt, even though the thing that the exposure, the cause of the hurt is no longer there, but the mindset of hurt is still there. So emotionally and mentally, I'm still hurt. And again, whether I broke my hip or whether or not I didn't get that job that I wanted, or my career didn't turn out the way it was supposed to be, or I got a divorce, or my parent died, or whatever it is, these things, some of them are very natural, but it's getting out of the mindset of hurt and getting into a mindset of, not hurt anymore. And a mindset of healing. And how does that help me even physically get better? Because again, I'm not that kind of doctor, but it would seem like even the physical healing is better when people want it to be better and want to feel healthier. Am I making that up, or is that correct?
Absolutely. Now, mindset is, again, mindset, recovery is more mental than it is physical. Mindset is 90% of the battle. If you're getting what you expect for yourself, and if you can be happy with what you're getting, most people do stunningly well. Stunningly well. And you talk about psychological safety and people who just sort of like, oh, this is what I expect, this is what I get. A lot of people don't expect much, and that's part of why we have, I think, underperforming teams. That's that's why we're not nearly as why some of our businesses don't do as well as they should, because people just don't expect much from what they're doing. Right? They kind of expect it to be, oh, this is what I got to do. I'm in the cubicle. Right? People get stuck. They get stuck. And I think that's one of the key things is just understanding that we all have some power, right? We all have probably more power than we realize. And that, understanding that and using it and continuing to kind of try and fight and push, that's just part of it. That's part of it. We're all healing something that happened to us. Every person, right? You think about dysfunctional workplaces, and, psychological safety. People don't feel safe in their homes. People don't feel safe in their homes. People don't feel safe in their families. People don't feel safe in their communities. People don't feel safe in their communities. People don't feel safe in their families. People don't feel safe in their homes. People don't feel safe in their homes. People don't feel safe in their homes. People don't feel safe in their families. People don't feel safe in their homes. People don't feel safe in their communities. People don't feel safe in their homes. People don't feel safe in their families. People don't feel safe in their homes. People don't feel safe in their communities. People don't feel safe in their homes. People don't feel safe in their families. People don't feel safe in their homes. People don't feel safe in their communities. People don't feel safe in their homes. People don't feel safe in their families. People don't feel safe in their homes. People don't feel safe in their communities. People don't feel safe in their homes. People don't feel safe in their families. People don't feel safe in their homes. People don't feel safe in their communities. People You know what I mean? They don't feel safe with their families. We're still as a society getting around to kind of figuring that out. You know how to have positive family dynamics, right?
Oh boy, oh boy. So, one last thing before before we wrap this up, and I'm sure you've got really important things to do, including caring for the kiddos and all that type of thing. But um, what if anything would you share with those who are in that what they thought was a dream job, and it's just not? It's just they know it's not quite what they want. Um, what would you share with them based on your experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. Life is a book made of chapters, and chapters end, and it's okay for chapters to end. It's totally okay for chapters to end, and it's okay to move on to a new chapter and write a new part of the book. Right? It's a plot twist. That's what books have. They have plot twists. Um, and understanding that, hey, this thing, maybe it ran its course, maybe it you know maybe it maybe the job itself changed, maybe you changed, maybe you grew, right? Maybe things change, and it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to change your path. It's okay to change your goals. Whether that's intrinsic or extrinsic, it's okay. It is okay, and you'll be, I know some wildly successful people, wildly successful people who spent decades getting, to the pinnacle, to the top. They're not all that happy. And, they're not necessarily all that happy. And, you think about, man, did I spend 20 years and I'm not happy? Really? Like, did I spend 30 years getting here and I'm not happy with it? And I'm doing it because it's all I know? The one thing, and this is the one thing I do know, having been in a lot of ERs and a lot of hospitals and seeing a lot of rough things, time is not promised, you know? And so, that's one thing we do have, right? Or that's one thing we don't necessarily know how much we have, I should say, is time, but we do have agency. And so, using the time you have wisely and saying, hey man, and just being honest with yourself and saying, hey, this ain't working out, or this is working out fine. This is good, but this isn't everything that I am capable of. This isn't. I have something else in the tank, or I could do, and then work into it, and saying, hey, maybe I need to change. And you could say that early on in your career. You could say that late in your career, and it honestly, the best time to do it is now. Don't wait.
Oh boy, uh, Dr. Schaffer, this has been an inspiring conversation. I have to tell you, it's just really inspiring to hear, and again to hear parts of your story that I certainly wasn't aware of. I mean, just from the outside looking in, it looks like uh, you have taken your own advice and written these chapters in your life, and I suspect there are probably more chapters to come. Uh, and I also suspect that for each of us, we can decide what our final chapter is going to be on our own. I mean, it can be long or short, but it's really up to us to kind of take hold of our own of our own lives and again our own agency and use it for our own benefit and not just kind of be pushed around by the system who says, well, you should be this or you should be that. You're too old for this, too young for that. Whatever it is, it's writing our own story. And honestly, it does sound like there might be a book in there too. So we'll have to probably talk about that another time. So okay, again, um, anything that you'd like to leave with our audience just before we go.
Follow your dreams. Yeah, follow your dreams. Push hard, and maybe it's a fight, but that's okay. It's okay for things to be hard. It's okay for things to be difficult.
Well, thank you very much. Again, thank you for your service to the public, for your contributions to medicine, for the family you're building, for the great human being you've turned out to be and will continue to be. I just it's an honor to know you, honor to have you on, And thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, for those of you who are watching or listening to this podcast for the first time, welcome. I hope something that you've heard will bring you back to another episode in the future. Previous episodes of the podcast can be found at psychhealthandsafetyusa.com. You can watch, like, subscribe, and share the podcast on the Flourish DX YouTube page. And please do join the Psych Health and Safety USA movement by connecting and becoming a subscriber on LinkedIn. Until next time, stay tuned and look out for the next episode of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. Tune in each week for new episodes of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. If you have a story or know of one that needs to be told, reach out to us on LinkedIn or send an email to david@id2-solutions.com or go to the Flourish DX website at flourishdx.com. We'll see you next time.